Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. Now, I know that Prime Minister Mark Carney and the Liberals don't like accountability, but I found this story I'm about to show you guys ridiculous even for them. Just a little bit of background before we get into it. We have a parliamentary budget officer, which is effectively a fiscal watchdog inside the government that tries to keep the government accountable for its spending. The last guy who is the official parliamentary budget officer had his term end a couple of months ago, and since then he was replaced by an interim PBO who is Jason Jaques. He is fantastic because he does not hide the fact that he does not like the massive deficit spending that the liberals are engaging in. And it's not because he's some biased conservative operative. He is a numbers guy and he doesn't like when the numbers don't add up. And right now, the Liberals are trying to replace Jason Jaques in record speed because they do not like him sounding off about their spending. They find it annoying. So, although government moves very slowly, they are trying to move very fast in replacing him. Right here, Dan Knight wrote this great article. Mark Carney seeks to replace fiscal watchdog with loyal lapdog. It goes down. Just to read a bit of this article, but that is Jason Jaques right there. And Dan Knight reads or writes, "It's remarkable, isn't it? After a decade of gaslighting Canadians about their so called fiscal responsible government, the Liberal Party, now under the direction of Mark Carney, finally runs into a problem they can't spin. Someone told the truth. Jason Jaques, the interim parliamentary budget officer, was appointed for 6 months, and within weeks, he did something this government considers a fireable offense. He reads the books, looked at the numbers, and spoke plainly. That's it. His crime, honesty. Here's what he found. First, the deficit. Remember when Trudeau said the budget will balance itself? That myth has now mutated into a projected $68.5 billion deficit for 2025-2026, up from $51.7 billion the year before. Jaques didn't just disagree with it; he called it stupefying, shocking, and this is the one they hated the most: unsustainable. Because if there's one thing Ottawa elites can't handle, it's accountability from someone who doesn't need a job after this. Now, I want to point out too that in fact the deficit this year will be $78 billion, and the actual debt servicing alone is $55 billion. So we're just lighting 54, $55 billion around that range on fire every year, and it will go up in time just to basically keep our creditors away from us. Jason Jaques, a guy who actually cares about the numbers balancing, called the Liberals out for this, and now the Liberals are trying to replace him as quickly as humanly possible, despite the fact that he had a term of more than 6 months, or just around 6 months, to stay on as the interim. I want to show you a clip of him speaking in front of Parliament just to give you an idea for why people hate his guts. So, after making that comment that the spending by the Liberals is stupefying and unsustainable and shocking, I loved this clip of a Liberal MP trying to follow up with them and say, well, Jason, what you really mean to say is that, yeah, while the spending's high, that, in the long run, it's all going to work out. Something maybe looks bad in the short term, but in the long term, it's gonna work. And I love when it cuts back to Jason Jaques, just his facial expression, because he doesn't just want to say this guy's an idiot who's asking him the question.
And obviously, you project, so we're on a good fiscal path, or we're on a better fiscal path than some of our G7 colleagues, and you project our deficit staying under 2% of GDP and debt holding near the low 40% range. Would you agree that these kinds of thresholds are really, in practice, fiscal anchors that signal some discipline?
I would go back to one of the comments I made at the outset that
I love whenever his face pauses like this. Like he's like, okay, how do I not get fired while also saying exactly what I want? The thing is that he knows that he's not supposed to say these things, even though it's his job to say these things. But there's something in Jason Jaques that refuses to not say it. I just need to project this larger on the screen. Oh my goodness, when the Liberals tell you that the fiscal outlook looks good, and it's your job to say it's not in a committee meeting. There's an actual face to that situation now.
Like, the most important word in the release this morning was unsustainable. We like it. I don't know. We didn't.
I love his just reaction to Vince Gasparo's question. He's like kind of musing around trying to see if he could break the news like lighter to him, and there's just no way.
Like, the most important word in the release this morning was unsustainable. We like it. I don't know. We didn't. We didn't choose it carelessly. I've been in the office for 17 years. I was working in the federal government, putting together budgets for 10 years prior to that. You got to be like, you choose these words with prudence and care.
And by the way, he is a nonpartisan actor in the government. He'd be the type of guy who, when the government is trying to put together all of the spending they want to do, he's the one who has to kind of bound it together with string and twine and try and make the whole thing work. So this is, guys, just somebody who just likes numbers and likes when they balance and can, do a proper multi-year projection for what things are going to look like in the future. And he doesn't go by the government's fake numbers of saying, oh, of course, we're going to have a big deficit this year, and then it's going to tail off really quickly. He knows what their spending commitments are going to have to keep being in the future, and no political spin on the numbers is going to affect him saying, no, you can't just have a $70 billion deficit one year, have it only drop by $10 billion the next year, and think you're somehow going to fiscally survive while your actual debt servicing costs keep going up every single year.
And certainly we don't want to be alarmist. And at the same time, like the current path we're on in terms of federal debt as a share of the economy is unsustainable.
Yeah, exactly what I was saying right there. That the federal debt portion of every budget is becoming, literally bigger than the health transfer costs for the federal government. The amount of money that the federal government gives out to each of the provinces to put into their healthcare systems is a smaller number than the amount of money in this current budget that goes towards just keeping the creditors at bay and trying to take a chunk out of us. That is how bad it is. The idea that Carney was some fiscal wizard is such a lie. But now I want to jump over to another news story. I'll probably talk a little bit more about it in future videos. But there is this story out there now. Carney calls a second batch of major projects transformational. Now, I really don't care about him announcing these new major projects. It's just him announcing a bunch of names of projects that may or may not be fast-tracked. It's just the Major Projects Office, a boondoggle of a bureaucracy if I've ever seen one, basically just releasing a list of a few more things that they may end up doing, and we're supposed to give them a big pat on the back for it. But what I found so interesting about all this is how the person who is currently the CEO of the Major Projects Office just had to admit that, a lot of these projects were only announcing them because they were effectively already done anyways. I'm not sure where it was specifically mentioned in here. I remember I've already read this article, but I read it on my phone. And then it's somewhere in here. I don't want to basically just read you guys the whole article. But what was really funny is the person who is currently the CEO of the new Major Projects Office basically said, well, yeah, we're announcing stuff because it's effectively low-hanging fruit. Now, that's the conservative criticism of it, specifically calling it just doing low-hanging fruit. But the CEO also had to say, well, yeah, of course we're announcing most of these projects because either they're almost done anyways and we're going to fast-track an almost done project, or it's like an expansion of a project that was already successfully completed. And so all this stuff is not shocking that we're doing, but it makes it seem like they're up to more activity than they really are. When you come out and you announce something big sounding, but it was never told to you that they've tried to get this thing done since 2013, and it's taken them so much longer than it should have. And now Carney's basically announcing that he's going to take this project seriously when it's already 75% completed. It's basically him just going back in time and trying to make things his own win. It's because the average person, including myself, doesn't know what major projects are currently underway in the country Or if anything Carney is announcing is something that should have been done, 10 years ago, and it's only being taken seriously now, and it doesn't actually mean anything's going to be started. Carney himself even knows that many of these projects, even if they get announced by the major projects office as being something they're looking at to potentially fast track, doesn't actually mean it's going to be done in 5 years. In fact, it doesn't even mean it's going to be fast tracked in the next year. It just means they're looking at it. And then if they don't end, if they finally fast track it, it seems like, oh wow, it's fast tracked. Well, it also could have already been well behind schedule, and we're not actually, getting it ahead of schedule or even getting it done on schedule. We're getting it done 4 years late, but we finally got it done. And maybe if we didn't fast track it, it would have never gotten done. But this is all just a bunch of fake achievements to make up for the fact that Mark Carney doesn't have any achievements yet in office. Everything has been pretty blah. The budget sucks. He hasn't gotten a trade deal. And we have these massive deficits that are going to be hamstringing our ability to spend in the future. So yes, we're going to spend less and invest more, except no matter how you put it, it's spending, and it's going to fiscally hem us in more and more in the future as our debt servicing costs quickly outpace our ability to actually build infrastructure. Anyways, that should be it for me today, guys. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you guys all next time.